Hey everyone! Today I want to share a few tips with you on how to design in desktop so that you have to futz around less in mobile view. This was actually a question that someone had asked me when I polled about this on Instagram. And I'm with you, Claire. As much as we love the ability to now customize mobile view in Fluid Engine, it's also a bit of a pain in the butt, isn't it? Because it's just not as intuitive as I think it could be. So let us dive straight into that. So first of all, I think it's important to remember what can and what cannot be done in mobile view. So when we update our mobile view, we can change the position of a content block, we can change the size, and we can change the block alignment. So if we take this example here, so we have a text block here, so I can, make it more narrow, for instance. I can also, if you look at this, it's top aligned vertically, so I can change that to be center aligned. And then I can also move it around. So if we now look at the desktop view, that hasn't affected any of that. In fact, in the desktop, it still is aligned to the top and the position is fine. All of that is good, so we can make these changes here. However, if we now start to change the content, so let's say I want to make this one paragraph 2, and let's say I want to, left align this, that will also make these changes in desktop view. So we definitely don't want that. So that's just something worth remembering. We can change the position, we can change the size and the alignment of content blocks, but do not change the actual content. So let's just undo that here for a moment. So with all of that in mind, one of the most challenging things is that in mobile view, the content blocks are stacked in the order that you added them in desktop view. So, oftentimes, I certainly used to do that in classic editor. I would just start with my text, then I would insert my images, and, so I would just start with the raw data if you want, and then, add all the other design elements. Well, in Fluid Engine, we can still do that in desktop version. But if you then go into mobile view, it will actually, it will stack it just in the order that we added it. So it's definitely worth mapping this out a little bit, So in this example here, we would want to add, so let's say I want to have the photo on top in mobile, and then I want to have the text and then the button. So I would add the photo first, then add my text block, and then add my button. So what happens if I now decide to add an element, So let's, for instance, add a shape block. Let's say I want to add a shape block behind my image, and I'm going to give it the arch or arc. Is it arc or arch? I never know how to pronounce this properly. Shape, and then I'm just gonna put it like this, and I'm going to put it behind and maybe make it a little bit wider. Okay, so now I'm really happy with that. But now what happens in mobile view? So if I go to mobile view, see, it's now added it to the bottom here. What do we do? So if you're like me, I always just want to move things, so I just want to take this and drag this. But if you do that in mobile view, you can quickly mess things up. So Squarespace actually have these nifty arrows here that help us move up and down. So I'm just going to use that, to move up here. And then I'm just going to start, changing the shape. Now remember, any of this does not affect our desktop. I'm just changing the shape. I'm going to put it to the back here. I'm going to move this up a little bit and maybe change this like that. And, so you can definitely play around with this until you have it where you like it. And then I'm just going to move it up a little bit. I'm going to move up these two and this, and now, you know, I have it how I like it. What's nice is, for instance, here in mobile view, I quite like to have the background shape be a little bit higher than the image. You know, I like to kind of stack it this way. But if I go back to the desktop view, they're still aligned at the bottom, you know. So that is, you know, where we have a lot more power now in mobile view. So one of the things that I like to do, and actually let me just move this one down a little bit as well to have a bit more even spacing, is that I now will save this as a section, because oftentimes, you know, I will reuse layouts, you know, or I will have a layout and I want to reuse like parts of it, you know, so I'm just going to use the whole layout and then, you know, shift things around. And we can now save sections, of course. And I love saved sections. They are, you know, such a game changer when we design. So I now saved this section, you know, which will have also saved what it's like on mobile. So let us just save this. We're going to have to refresh before we go back in, and now go back to the desktop view. And now let us go to our saved sections and add this one. And I'm just going to give it a different background color so that we can see the different sections. And now if I look at it in mobile view, voila, it's all there. So that is probably my biggest tip. For making design a little easier so that it's already optimized in mobile view. Save your favorite sections, you know, make sure they're mobile optimized, and then you can just reuse them, and then we don't have to futz around with it anymore. So yeah, so I absolutely love that. Another thing that I also really like is the text scaling feature. That can also be very helpful. So for instance, here we have, let me just see here, I had an example for that earlier. Oh, actually sorry, just one more example of how we can just change the size a little bit of a content block just to make the text a little bit more aligned, right? So our scaling, text scaling. So for instance here, you know, the website title I had scaled. So let me just unscale that. So now it's our heading 1. And if I now go into desktop view, you know, it looks like this. I don't like how this wraps, you know, because it's a weird thing that Squarespace does actually. When we wrap things, you know, it adds like this little space here. If something is right aligned or left aligned, well, left, yeah. And so what I do, and that mostly works, you know, with short titles and short taglines. You know, you don't want to necessarily do that like with long ones, because then they'll get really crunched on mobile. So I'm just going to highlight this, and I'm going to scale it. And if I now look at it on mobile, now you can see now it's all nice on one line. I really like that. Let me show you another couple of examples for this. So I think let me just save this for a moment. If I go to the Work With Me page, so here are, you know, a couple more examples where, for instance, here I have also scaled the text. Now this means that depending on the size of, you know, the box, that, you know, the size of the font will be a little bit different, but sometimes that can look okay, right? And if we look at this on mobile now, okay, this is sometimes weird, you know, sometimes when we use the scaling feature, it can look a little off on mobile, but it actually isn't. So if we actually save that and refresh our page, it's actually correct. So when you see that, just refresh it and then it will be okay. So, you know, this can be quite nice. You know, if we don't use the scaling feature, then it would look like this, you know. So if we look back at the desktop view of this, you know, so here I have my 3 lines, and here I also have 3 lines, but then in mobile view, they actually, you know, look different. So you might want to play around with that a little bit. This example brings me to my last tip. We can still use Classic Editor. Now, this only works if you are a Circle member, so my apologies if you're not, then this will not work. But Circle members, we can still use the Classic Editor. So in this example, for instance, I used the Classic Editor with our all-time favorite image layouts, so I am using the card layout here, and I really like it for this particular, design. So yeah, why not? It's easily done. When you add a section, just scroll to the bottom, and then here we can add a blank section in Classic Editor. And I think that makes total sense, so certainly for quite simple sections, I still use the Classic Editor. And it just is already mobile optimized. There isn't anything we need to do. So that is just a really good option for Circle members. Yeah, so I hope that this was helpful. And if you have any questions, just leave them in the comments. Thank you.